You know, I've watched thousands of businesses over the years, and one thing becomes clear after a while. Most of them never grow. Not really. They start with hope, they run for years, some of them even survive for decades, but they never actually grow. They stay the same size, same revenue, same problems, same owner doing the same things year after year. And the strange part is, it's not because the owners are lazy. Most of them work harder than anyone I know. They're in early, they leave late, they skip vacations, they worry at night, they care deeply, but the business just doesn't grow. It sits there like a weight they carry, not like something that builds on itself. Now, why is that? It's a question I've thought about for a long time, because you'd think that hard work would be enough. You'd think that caring and effort would translate into growth, but it doesn't, not automatically. And once you understand why, you start to see the same pattern everywhere. Let me start with something simple. Most business owners are trapped inside their own business. And I don't mean trapped like they can't leave for a day or two. I mean trapped in the sense that the business cannot function without them. They are the business. If they stop, everything stops. And that's not a business that can grow. That's a job, a very demanding, very stressful job that happens to have their name on it. Think about it. If you own a bakery and you're the one baking every morning, you can only bake so much. There are only so many hours in a day. You can work faster, you can wake up earlier, you can push yourself harder. But there's a ceiling, a hard ceiling. And that ceiling is you, your time, your energy, your two hands. The business can never be bigger than what you personally can produce, and I see this everywhere. The consultant who has to be in every client meeting, the contractor who has to be on every job site, the designer who has to approve every project. They think they're running a business, but really they're just working for themselves. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want, but let's be honest about it. That's not a business that grows. That's a business that stays exactly the size of one person's capacity. Now, here's where it gets harder, because to grow beyond yourself, you have to let go. You have to trust other people to do the work. You have to build systems. You have to step back from the daily operations and start working on the business instead of in it. And most people can't do that. Not because they don't know they should. They know, everyone tells them. But they can't actually do it. Why? Because it's terrifying. Think about what it means to step back. It means someone else might make a mistake. It means the quality might drop. It means a customer might have a bad experience. It means you might lose money in the short term while you're training people and building systems. And for most business owners, that fear is too much. So they stay. They keep doing everything themselves, because at least then they know it's done right. At least then they feel in control. But here's the truth. That feeling of control is an illusion. Because if you're doing everything, you're not in control. You're just busy. You're running in place. And the business will never be worth anything because it can't run without you. If you tried to sell it, what would you be selling? A job that only you know how to do? Nobody wants to buy that. So the first trap is this. The business owner becomes the bottleneck. They work harder and harder, but the business stays the same size because growth requires leverage. It requires systems and people and processes that work without you. And most owners never make that shift. They stay stuck in the day today because letting go feels too risky. Now let's talk about another pattern I see. Most businesses have no real advantage. They're doing the same thing as everyone else in more or less the same way, hoping that hard work and good service will be enough. And maybe it is enough to survive, but it's not enough to grow. Warren Buffett talks about moats. And I think this is one of the most important ideas in business, even for small businesses. A moat is something that protects you, something that makes it hard for competitors to take your customers, something that gives you an edge that isn't easy to copy. Emos. Small businesses don't have a moat. They're in a crowded market doing what everyone else does. And when that's the case, the only way to compete is on price or on effort. You work longer hours, you charge a little less, you try to be friendlier, and that works for a while. But it's exhausting, and it doesn't build anything durable. I'll give you an example. 2 coffee shops on the same street. Both make good coffee. Both have nice staff. Both are clean and comfortable. What's the difference between them? Honestly, not much. So customers just go to whichever one is more convenient that day, and both shops stay small because neither one has a reason for customers to choose them over the other. There's no moat. Now imagine one of those shops starts roasting their own beans. They develop a signature blend that people love. They build a reputation for that specific thing. Suddenly, they're not just another coffee shop. They have something the other one doesn't. That's a moat. It's small, but it's real. And over time, that advantage compounds. But building a moat takes time. It takes patience. It takes a willingness to focus on one thing and get really good at it instead of trying to be everything to everyone. And most business owners don't have that patience. They see what other people are doing and they think, I should do that too. So they add more services, more products, more options. They spread themselves thin. And in trying to do everything, they end up being exceptional at nothing. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Most business owners make decisions based on emotion, not logic. And I don't mean they're irrational. I mean they're human. They're scared of losing what they have. They're anxious about taking risks. They're influenced by what they see other people doing. And those emotions quietly guide every decision, even when they don't realize it. Let's say your business has a slow month. Revenue is down. You start to panic a little. So what do? You might drop your prices to attract more customers. You might say yes to a project that isn't a good fit just to get the cash flow. You might cut back on marketing because you need to save money. All of these decisions feel reasonable in the moment, but they're driven by fear. And fear makes you think short term. The problem is growth requires long-term thinking. It requires investing when things are uncertain. It requires saying no to bad opportunities, even when you need the money. It requires discipline. And discipline is hard when you're scared. I see this pattern all the time. A business has a good year and the owner relaxes. They take their foot off the gas, they enjoy the comfort, then things slow down and they panic. They make reactive decisions, short-term fixes, trying to get back to where they were. But they never build anything that lasts because they're always reacting to the immediate situation instead of building for the future. Now contrast that with the businesses that grow. They're boring. They do the same things over and over. They have systems. They have discipline. They don't chase every new trend. They don't panic when things slow down. They just keep doing what works patiently, consistently for years. And eventually that compounds into something significant. It's like the difference between someone who invests a little bit every month for 30 years and someone who tries to time the market, jumping in and out based on how they feel. The first person ends up wealthy. The second person stays broke, even though they might have worked just as hard. It's the consistency that matters, not the effort. Here's another thing. Most business owners confuse being busy with making progress. They fill their days with tasks, emails, meetings, putting out fires, handling customer issues, managing employees. They're always moving. But at the end of the year, the business is in the same place it was at the beginning because they're working on the wrong things. There are only a few activities in any business that actually drive growth. Things like acquiring new customers, improving your product, building systems, training your team. Everything else is maintenance, and maintenance is necessary, but it doesn't grow the business. It just keeps it running. But maintenance feels urgent. Someone needs an answer right now. A customer has a problem. An employee has a question. So you drop everything and handle it. And you do that all day, every day, and it feels productive because you're busy, but you're not making progress. You're just maintaining. The businesses that grow are the ones where the owner protects their time. They block off hours to work on the important things. They delegate the maintenance. They say no to interruptions. And this is hard because it feels selfish. It feels like you're not being responsive. But if you don't protect your time, you'll spend your whole life reacting to other people's priorities instead of building toward your own goals. Now let's talk about comfort. This is a big one. Most businesses stay small because the owner gets comfortable. Not comfortable like they're relaxing on a beach somewhere, comfortable like they know how things work. They figured out a routine. The business pays the bills. It's stable, and stability feels good after years of struggle. But comfort is dangerous in business because the moment you get comfortable, you stop pushing. You stop looking for ways to improve. You stop taking risks. And the world doesn't stop moving just because you've found your rhythm. Competitors are still out there. Markets are still changing. Technology is still evolving. And if you're standing still, you're actually falling behind. I've seen this so many times. A business does well for 5 or 10 years. The owner gets comfortable. They think they figured it out. And then slowly, quietly, things start to decline. Customers drift away. newer competitors show up with better technology or better marketing, and the owner doesn't even notice until it's too late because they were comfortable. They weren't paying attention. They stopped being paranoid. And that's the thing. You have to stay a little paranoid, not in a way that makes you miserable, but in a way that keeps you alert. You have to always be asking, what could go wrong? What's changing? What am I missing? The businesses that grow are the ones that stay curious. They never assume they've figured everything out. They keep learning, keep adapting, keep improving, even when things are going well, especially when things are going well. Let me tell you something else I've noticed. Most business owners copy what other people are doing. And I understand why. You see someone else having success and you think, I should do that too. But copying doesn't build a real business. It just makes you a weaker version of someone else. The businesses that actually grow are the ones that figure out their own path. They understand what makes them different. They lean into that difference instead of trying to look like everyone else. And this takes confidence. It takes a willingness to stand out, to do things your own way, even when people tell you you're wrong. But here's the problem. Most business owners don't trust themselves enough to be different. They're afraid that if they don't do what everyone else is doing, they'll fail. So they follow the crowd. They copy the marketing, the pricing, the services, and they up blending in. And when you blend in, the only way to compete is on price. And competing on price is a race to the bottom. There's another layer to this. Most business owners don't invest in themselves. They'll invest in equipment, in inventory, in marketing. But they won't invest in learning. They won't hire a coach. They won't take a course. They won't read books about strategy or finance or leadership. They think they already know enough, or they think they can't afford it. But the truth is they can't afford not to. Your business will never grow beyond your own understanding of how to run a business. If you don't know how to hire well, you'll make bad hires. If you don't know how to manage cash flow, you'll run into money problems. If you don't know how to build systems, you'll stay trapped in the daily grind. And you can't learn those things just by doing them. You have to study them. You have to seek out people who know more than you and learn from them. But most owners are too proud or too busy to do that. They think they should already know this stuff. They think asking for help is a sign of weakness. So they just keep doing what they've always done, hoping it'll eventually work better. And it doesn't. Now, here's something that might sound harsh, but it's true. Most businesses stay small because the owner doesn't really want them to grow. Not deep down. They say they want to grow. They complain about being stuck. But when you look at their actions, they're not active ally doing the things that would lead to growth. Because growth is uncomfortable. It's risky. It requires change. And most people, if we're being honest, would rather stay in a familiar struggle than face an unfamiliar challenge. Think about what growth actually requires. You have to hire people, which means you have to trust them and manage them. You have to invest money before you see results, which means you might lose money in the short term. You have to let go of control, which means things might not be done exactly the way you would do them. You have to deal with more complexity, more problems, more responsibility. And for a lot of people, that sounds terrible. So they don't do it. They stay small, not because they can't grow, but because growing would require them to become someone they're not ready to be. And that's okay, by the way. There's nothing wrong with running a small business if that's genuinely what you want. But let's be clear about it. If you're complaining about being stuck while simultaneously avoiding all the things that would help you grow, the problem isn't the market or the economy or your competitors. The problem is you. Let me bring this back to something Warren Buffett talks about all the time. The power of compounding. Most people understand compounding in terms of money. You invest $1,000, it grows to $1,100, then that $1,100 grows to $1,200, and so on. Over time, the growth accelerates because you're earning returns on your returns. The same thing happens in business, but only if you're doing things that compound. Systems compound, reputation compounds, customer relationships compound, skills compound, but only if you're patient enough to let them build. Most business owners don't give anything enough time to compound. They try something for a few months, and if it doesn't work immediately, they move on to something else. They're always starting over. And when you're always starting over, nothing compounds. You're just spinning in place. The businesses that grow are playing a different game. They pick a strategy and stick with it for years. They build on what they've already built instead of tearing it down and starting fresh every time things get hard. And over time, that consistency creates momentum. Things get easier. The business starts to run itself. Customers start to come to you instead of you having to chase them. That's what compounding looks like in a business, but you can't get there if you're impatient. You can't get there if you're constantly changing directions. You have to be willing to do the same boring things consistently for a very long time. And most people just don't have that in them. Here's one more thing. Most business owners don't understand their numbers. And I don't mean they can't read a profit and loss statement. I mean they don't really understand what drives their business financially. They don't know their customer acquisition costs. They don't how their lifetime customer value. They don't know their true margins after accounting for all the hidden costs. They're just guessing. And you can't make good decisions when you're guessing. I've seen businesses that were busy, that felt successful, that were barely breaking even because the owner didn't understand the economics. They were charging too little or spending too much on things that didn't matter or focusing on customers that weren't actually profitable. And they didn't know because they weren't looking at the numbers closely enough. The businesses that grow are obsessive about their numbers. They know exactly where the money comes from and where it goes. They track everything. They test everything. They make decisions based on data, not feelings. And this gives them an enormous advantage because most of their competitors are just winging it. So if I had to sum this up, here's what I'd say. Most businesses stay small because the owner is trapped in patterns that don't lead to growth. They're working in the business instead of on it. They're making emotional decisions instead of logical ones. They're comfortable instead of curious. They're copying instead of creating. They're impatient instead of persistent. And they're avoiding the hard changes that would actually make a difference. And the sad part is, most of this is invisible to them. They don't see the patterns. They just see the result, which is a business that won't grow no matter how hard they work. And T, hey, blame everything else, the market, the economy, the competition, bad luck. But the truth is the business is stuck because they're stuck. And until they're willing to change how they think and how they operate, nothing else will change either. The good news is if you can see these patterns, you can break them. It's not easy. It requires discipline and patience and a willingness to be uncomfortable. But it's possible. And that's really what separates the businesses that grow from the ones that stay small forever. Not talent, not luck, not timing, just a willingness to do the hard things that most people avoid.